I was driving home from a work conference last winter, cutting across 3 states in one night. It was freezing, the kind of cold that makes the inside of your nose sting. The interstate was a black ribbon, and my headlights kept catching little patches of ice that looked like spilled sugar. Around 2 a.m., I got that pressure behind my eyes that means I need to stretch and hit the bathroom. The next exit sign promised a rest stop in 2 miles. Perfect, I said out loud because for some reason I talk to myself when I'm alone that late. A bad habit, or maybe it keeps me company. The rest stop looked abandoned. There were no trucks lined up like usual. No cars idling. The whole place sat in the dark except for one high lamp near the center of the parking lot. It flickered in a slow, tired way like a heartbeat that couldn't decide if it wanted to keep going. I parked under that lamp. The light hummed and threw a long, shaky shadow of my car across the empty lot. The restroom building was a low brown brick cube with 2 doors, men's and women's, and a vending machine off to the side. I got out and locked my car, another habit, and started toward the door. That's when I noticed something that should have made me get back in the car and leave. The women's room door was propped open with a small rock. Just a little thing, round and smooth like someone picked it up from a riverbed and set it there on purpose. The men's room door was closed. I told myself the state workers left it open for air or something. The cold air moved through the doorway like a breath. I listened. Nothing. Just the hiss of the wind on the highway and the tick-tick of my engine cooling. Inside, the fluorescent light struggled and then came up. It smelled like disinfectant and old water. 3 stalls, 2 sinks, a mirror with a crack running through the corner like a spider web. The last stall door was closed. I didn't think much of it. I went into the first stall and locked it. As I was washing my hands, I started hearing the light outside. It had a pattern, on-off, like it was trying to match my breathing. I wiped my hands on my jeans because the paper towel dispenser was empty and glanced up into the mirror. The last stall door was open. I froze. I hadn't heard it move. I hadn't heard anything. Hello? My voice sounded too loud. It bounced off the tile. No answer. I stepped toward the stall. It was empty. Clean, actually. The toilet water was still and black. It looked like a hole. For a second, my brain tried to tell me I was overreacting. Doors drift open. Air moves, that's all. I left the restroom. The night felt thicker. My car looked way farther away than it had moments before. That's when I saw him. He was standing at the edge of the lamp's circle just beyond the light, a tall, thin shape, not moving, facing me. I couldn't see his face, only the top of his head and the line of his shoulders. He had one hand up like he was rubbing his temple. "Hey," I called out because again I do dumb things when I'm scared. "You okay?" He didn't answer. He didn't step forward, he just stayed there like he was waiting for me to get closer. Every instinct told me to go to my car, but that meant walking toward him. I looked around for a second light, another option. The vending machine screen glowed faint blue. It felt like a tiny island of safety. I walked to it trying to act casual. I could feel his eyes on me the whole way. When I got to the machine, I stole a glance back. He was gone. He didn't walk away. I would have seen him. He just wasn't there anymore. The wind suddenly picked up hard enough to push my coat against my back. That's when I heard a new sound. It came from behind the restroom building. A soft, quick step. Then another. Then a whisper. No words, just the sound of a voice moving fast. I had to make a choice, car or building. I went for the car. My keys were in my hand and I pressed the unlock button as I ran. Halfway there, the lamp overhead sputtered and died. Everything dropped into dark. I could still see the gray outline of my car and that lighter patch of sky over the highway. My footsteps sounded too loud on the pavement. I reached the car, grabbed the handle, and felt it resist. In my panic, I'd hit lock instead of unlock. I stabbed at the key fob, got the click, yanked the door open, and slid in. As I did, something touched the back of my coat. Not a grab, a brush, like fingertips that weren't sure if they wanted to hold on. I slammed the door and hit the locks. My breath fogged the windshield and then cleared. And in that circle of clearing, I saw him again. He was crouched 2 parking spaces away at the same edge of the broken light. He wasn't tall anymore. He was small, compact like a folded person. His hands were flat on the ground. He had his head tilted a little like a curious dog. I started the car. The engine sounded like thunder next to the silence. The crouched shape flinched, then slowly stood. I threw it in reverse. As my headlights swept across him, his face finally showed for a second. His eyes were wrong, big and shiny like marbles. The pupils didn't catch the light the way they should, and his smile was fixed and too straight, like a mask that someone pulled too tight across a face. I didn't wait to analyze it. I backed out and floored it. Gravel spat from under my tires. I shot down the on-ramp like I was trying to beat a train. The adrenaline didn't drop for miles. When it finally did, I realized something strange. My coat sleeve had a long, pale smear on it. Not dirt, not salt from the road. It looked like clay, like the residue from a rubber glove, thin and almost skin-colored. I threw the coat in the trunk at the next gas station. I didn't stop at rest areas for the rest of the winter. And when I pass that exit now, I watch for the flicker of that one lonely lamp. It's always on. I've never seen it off again, not even during the day. But the door to the women's room? Every time I glance over, it's propped open with that same round little rock, and sometimes, only sometimes, I catch a shape at the edge of the light. Tall, then small, then gone, like it can't decide what it wants to be. I rented a basement room in a big old house for cheap because I was broke and the landlord only cared that you paid on time and didn't start fires. The house had a leaning porch and a yard full of dead leaves year-round. My room was half underground. The top of my little window lined up with the dirt outside, and I could see ankles when people walked past. It sounds dumb now, but I liked that window. It made me feel connected to the outside. I could hear rain hit the grass and cars go by above. There was one problem. At night, the window turned into a mirror for the room, and if anyone outside walked by, their legs and feet would look huge and close, like they were in the room with me. The first week there, it messed me up. I kept thinking I was seeing someone stand still out there, just beyond the glass. I'd stare and stare until I realized it was the reflection of my own lamp. The other tenants were fine. We kept to ourselves. There was a guy upstairs who left at 4 a.m. for work, and an older woman who fed stray cats. My landlord showed up once a month with cigarettes and a cash box. Everything was normal until one night in late October, when the power went out during a storm. The house swallowed its own noises. No fridge hum. No upstairs TV. Just rain and the wind pushing the trees against the siding with a slow, dragging sound. I lit a candle and put it on my desk near the window. The flame flickered and made the room breathe. I lay on my bed and tried to scroll on my phone, but my signal was trash and my battery was at 12%. That's when I heard footsteps on the leaves outside. Not light, quick steps, heavy ones. Like boots, heel first. They crunched to a stop right outside the window. I sat up. The candle threw my shadow across the ceiling. I wanted to tell myself it was the upstairs tenant leaving early, but it wasn't time for that. And the steps had come from the wrong direction, the side yard instead of the driveway. The window looked black. My own faint reflection floated in it. The rain had let up, so every sound was sharp. I heard breathing. Not my own. Slow, through the nose. I stood and walked to the window. My heart was in my throat. I got close enough to fog the glass with my breath. The candle flame dipped, then came back. I cupped my hands around my face to block the reflection. Two eyes looked back at me. They weren't right up against the glass. They were a few feet back in the dark. The candle flicker lit them in pulses. I could see the outline of a head. Dirt smeared on the glass on the outside made smudged shapes like someone had been leaning there before the rain cleaned it. "Hello?" I said, because that's apparently my thing. The eyes blinked once. Then the head tilted. The way curious people tilt their heads when they try to read your lips, except it was too slow, like the neck had to think about it first. "I'm calling the police," I said. My voice tried to be brave and failed. The eyes vanished. The dark went back to being dark. The footsteps crunched away across the wet leaves toward the backyard. I didn't sleep, obviously. I sat in a chair with my phone in my hand and the candle burned down into a little wax lake. The power came back around 3 a.m. The house sighed as everything kicked on. I finally slept a few hours right before sunrise, when everything always feels safer. The next day, I checked the ground outside the window. Mud held prints of boots. The treads were deep and big. The heels were worn down on the outside edges. They went from the side gate straight to my window, then around the house to the backyard fence, and then stopped. Like whoever it was had stepped over the fence without leaving marks on the other side. The neighbor's yard was wet and clean. I told the landlord. He shrugged and said, "Halloween brings out weirdos," and he nailed a little metal latch on the inside of my window so it wouldn't open more than an inch. A week later, it happened again. No storm this time. It was a clear, cold night. I was playing a cheap game on my laptop with headphones in. I took them off to rest my ears, and as soon as I did, I heard the heavy steps again. Crunch, crunch, stop. I didn't go to the window. I didn't want to stand there face to face. I turned off the lamp and moved to the corner of the room near the door so I could see the window from the side. The breathing started. Slow. Patient. Then, very gently, the window latch moved. It ticked against the frame as it lifted, as if someone outside was trying to push the window up and hit the lock. It clicked again, again, like a finger tapping a tooth. The window didn't rise, but the pressure was steady, testing. I dialed 911, keeping my voice down. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line to get somewhere safe. "I'm in a basement," I said. "There is no safe." I heard the footsteps again, lighter now. Something soft brushing the glass. The person outside was crouching, I realized, lowering themselves to get a better angle on the latch. Then, near the top corner of the window, a fingertip pressed against the glass. It dragged slowly down, leaving a pale snail trail. The finger looked too long in the candle memory my brain held from last week. Too thin. The nail was short and squared off like it had been clipped with a dull blade. A flashlight beam burst through the trees and danced across the yard. The footsteps outside my window leapt up and ran, really ran this time, toward the backyard fence. I heard the chain link rattle and then slam. By the time 2 officers got to the side yard, the neighbor behind us had his porch light on. He stood there in a robe, blinking. "You looking for the tall one?" He asked. "What tall one?" The officer said. "The guy who keeps walking the fence line after midnight," the neighbor said, like it was just a small neighborhood quirk. "Saw him last week. Saw him tonight. He doesn't like light. They didn't catch anyone. They told me to keep my window locked and maybe move. Real helpful, I did move. But not before winter came and the ground froze. One of the last nights I was there, I woke up around 2 a.m. to a sound that made my skin crawl so hard it felt like I was shedding it. A whisper under the bed. I sleep on a low frame. There's no under the bed space except a few inches. The whisper wasn't words. It was breath moving over rough wood. It lasted maybe 5 seconds. I sat up, heart in my chest, and realized the sound hadn't come from under my bed. It had come from the window. The latch was vibrating gently. Not moving up, just vibrating, like someone was running a fingernail across it very fast. I got my phone light and shined it at the window. The beam hit the glass and splashed back onto my face. There were fingerprints smeared all over the outside. Hundreds of them, some big, some small, all pressed in the same direction, toward the latch. When I finally left for good a week later, I walked my bags out to my car and noticed something I hadn't before. The dirt outside the window where the boots had always stood, it wasn't sinking anymore. It had a firm, flat sheen on top, like it had been pressed smooth and baked by a weight that never moved, night after night. Whoever he wasn't just visiting. He'd been standing there for hours at a time, long enough to polish the ground. Sometimes at night in my new place, when the heater kicks on and the vents shift, I hear a soft little tick that sounds like a latch tapping against wood. It's on the other side of a completely different wall now in a different city. But the rhythm? It's the same. This happened when I was 19, and thought nothing bad could really happen to me because nothing bad had yet. I went on a solo day hike in early spring. The air was cool and the trail was quiet, and I lost track of time. By the time I got back to the trailhead, the sun was already behind the ridge and the lot was in shadow. There were 2 cars left, mine and a black sedan with tinted windows. The sedan was parked nose out, ready to leave. I tossed my pack into my trunk, sat in the driver's seat, and turned the key. Click. Nothing. Dead battery. I had no jumper cables. No signal. I laughed at first. It sounded brave in my head and weak out loud. The only option was to ask the sedan for a jump. I walked over and knocked on the passenger window. The glass slid down a few inches. Cold air breathed out of the car like it was a living thing. The person inside was a man in a black baseball cap, hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel. He didn't look at me for a second, like he was waiting for the window to stop so he could time his glance perfectly. "Hey," I said, "my battery's dead. Any chance you could give me a jump?" He turned his head. His smile was automatic and went away before his face finished turning. "Sure," he said. His voice was dry. "Pop your hood." I thanked him, went back to my car, and popped the hood. By the time I returned to the front, he was already out of his car. He was tall, wearing a puffy jacket that rustled when he moved. He carried cables that didn't look like they belonged in his trunk. They were too new, too clean. He clipped the cables fast. Too fast. Red to my battery first, then to his, then black to his, and then he paused over mine with the last clamp hovering. "You hike alone?" he asked without looking at me. "Yeah. Dumb, I know." He didn't laugh. He attached the last clamp and said, "Get in. When I tell you go, you go." I slid into my seat. He stayed outside for a second, just standing there with his hands on my hood, looking down the empty dirt road that led to the highway. The shadows were long and blue. The trees were black lines. He seemed to be listening for something. "Okay," he said finally. "Try it." I turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, started. Relief flushed through me. I gave him a thumbs up and started to get out to unclip the cables. "Stay," he said quickly. "Let it run." He walked back to his car, put away the cables, and then came to my window. He leaned down and looked in at me through the glass. His eyes didn't blink. They didn't seem dry. They just stayed open. "You should follow me out," he said. "It gets dark fast, and there are animals." "Yeah, thanks," I said. Something about how he said animals made me think he didn't mean deer. He got in his car and pulled out slow. I waited a second and then followed. The dirt road twisted through the trees. The last of the light sat on the tops of the pines like a thin strip of fire. The sedan drove at 20, hugging the center. I had the feeling he was watching me in his rear view without moving his head. A mile in, the sedan signaled right even though there was no turn. Then it slowed, stopped. In the middle of the road, I stopped too. The trees crowded close. No wind, no bird calls. The silence felt like a held breath. He didn't get out. He didn't move. I honked once, a short, friendly honk like, "Hey buddy, everything okay?" His reverse lights flicked on. He started backing up. I put my car in reverse too, my heart suddenly jackhammering. He kept coming, neat and slow like he had practiced this. I hit my horn for real this time and rolled my window down. "What are you doing?" I shouted. He kept backing up. 10 feet 5'3", his bumper was right at my hood. If he reversed one more foot, he'd touch me. I threw my car into drive and pulled onto the soft shoulder to get around him. My tires chewed the dirt. As I drew even with his driver's side window, I turned to look. He was staring straight ahead. His hands were still at 10 and 2. His mouth was open like he was saying a long ah that made no sound. His baseball cap turned his eyes into hollows. Enough. I gunned it past him and got back onto the road. In my mirror, I saw his car snap into drive and swing in behind me. He accelerated. Fast, my battery had just been jump-started. If I stalled, I was done. The road curved left, then right. Gravel spit. I kept my eyes forward and it almost hit a man standing in the road. He came out of nowhere. He stood dead center with his hands at his sides. I slashed the wheel and shot onto the other shoulder, barely missing a tree. In my mirror, the black sedan didn't swerve at all. It went straight through that spot and didn't slow down. The man didn't move because there wasn't one. When my brain caught up a second later, I realized what I had seen. A human shape made out of sticks and old clothes, propped up in the middle of the road like a scarecrow. Its face was a cutout of a grocery bag with 2 circles for eyes. I hit the highway, shaking so hard my teeth clicked. The sedan followed me all the way to the first gas station. He pulled into the far side of the lot and parked with his nose pointing out again, directly facing the exit. I stayed by the pumps with other people around and went inside. When I came out, the sedan was still there. The man was sitting very still. A trucker walked past his car and glanced in. He paused, then kept walking faster. I asked the cashier if they had security outside. He nodded. "Why?" "Some guy followed me from the trailhead," I said. "He's freaking me out." The cashier leaned over the counter and looked out the window. His face changed in a way I didn't like. He went a little pale around the mouth. "That guy?" he said. "In the black cap?" "Yeah, I know him," the cashier said. "Well, know his car. He's been hanging around all week. He reads the missing posters and then he just sits out there. He never buys anything. The cops already told him to move along twice." Does he live around here? The cashier didn't answer right away. He just watched the man for a few more seconds. I don't think he lives anywhere, he said finally. He only shows up after dark. And there's one more thing. What? The first time he came in, we pulled the tape from the night before to see when he arrived. His car didn't. He looked embarrassed as he said it. I know how that sounds. But we can't find the moment it pulls in. It's just not there on the recording. He's parked and then he's parked. I stayed inside until another couple came in and then left. I walked out with them and got in my car. The black sedan's headlights came on the second I opened my door. I expected him to follow me home. He didn't. He pulled out ahead of me, turned onto the highway, and drove into the dark without a signal. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. A week later, I drove back to the trail to meet a friend. I showed up early on purpose in daylight. Near the start of the dirt road on the right side, I saw a new sign on the fence. Missing. Hiker last seen April 2nd. Underneath that sign, tied to the wire with twine, was the scarecrow head. Just the paper bag face. The circles for eyes were still there, but someone had drawn new pupils, teeny tiny, way up in the corners, as if the scarecrow was looking sideways at the road, as if it was waiting to see who would come back again after dark.